What happened the day a nurse called security on my dad? I'm standing next to my father's hospital chair while a security guard walks toward us because the nurse has just told the whole floor that the old man in bed 9 is hiding a weapon under his shirt. The weapon is a bulge on the left side of his stomach. So I lift the hem of his shirt for the nurse and the guard to see. It is a colostomy bag. A nurse on a cancer ward called security on a 70-year-old chemo patient because the bag that collects his waste made a lump under his clothes. To understand how my dad ended up treated like a threat in the one place that was supposed to take care of him, you have to go back about an hour. My dad is 70. His name is Walt. He has been coming to this oncology floor every 3 weeks since they took out half his colon last spring. The surgery left him with a colostomy bag that sits under his shirt and quietly does a job part of him used to do. He hates it and never talks about it, so he keeps it covered. The regular nurses know him. They know he is hard of hearing, that he answers slow, and that under the grumbling, he is the gentlest man on the floor. That afternoon, his regular nurse was out. The floor was being run by someone named Yates, who had transferred in the month before and already had a reputation for treating patients like luggage that talked back. Yates decided my dad was a problem the second she met him because he did not catch her first question and did not jump when she repeated it. She told him to sit up straight. When he shifted and the bag made its shape under his shirt, something in her face changed. She pointed at his stomach and asked what he had under there. My dad, who had not fully heard her and would not have wanted to explain his bag to a stranger in a crowded room, said it was nothing and pulled his jacket across it. That was all she needed. Sir, I need to see what you are concealing. I stepped in and told her quietly that it was a medical device and I would happily explain it in private. She talked over me. If it is medical, he can show me. People who hide things on this unit are a danger to my staff. I said he was a chemo patient and she was embarrassing him. She cut me off. I decide what is a threat on my floor, not the family. Then she stepped back, put her hand near the phone on the wall, and told my father that if he did not lift his shirt right now, she would call security and have him searched. My dad, who has buried 2 brothers and beaten a cancer that should have killed him, seemed to fold into that chair because the one thing he had ever asked of the world was to not have to show this part of himself to strangers. So she made the call. The guard who came was a heavy-set man named Cooper, who had walked my dad out to the parking garage more than once on his bad days. He came around the corner fast and slowed the instant he saw who was sitting in the chair. Yates pointed at my father and said, "He is concealing an object under his shirt and refusing to show it." My dad looked up at me, tired to the bone, and gave me the smallest nod. I crouched down and lifted the hem of his shirt just enough for the nurse and the guard to see. There was no weapon under that shirt, only a clear plastic colostomy bag taped to his stomach. I held it there long enough for her to understand, then dropped it. Cooper looked at the bag, looked at Yates, and asked her, flat, if that was the weapon. Yates would not give it up. He still refused a direct instruction. That is a safety issue no matter what it turned out to be. Cooper did not answer. He crouched to my dad's good ear, called him by his first name, asked if he was all right, and told him to take all the time he needed. Then he walked back to his post without looking at Yates. Walt still had 40 minutes left on his drip. I sat back down and did not speak, because there was nothing I could say that would undo what just happened in front of every person on that floor. He would not look at me. He sat with his jacket pulled tight across his middle and his eyes fixed on a spot on the floor about 3 feet in front of him, and I could feel him trying to make himself smaller. An older woman across the aisle, hooked to her own drip, waited until Yates had moved across the floor and then leaned toward me. She kept her voice low. She did something like that to my husband last week, made him open his bag in front of everyone to check his port. She looked at me with the expression of someone who had been sitting on a story for days and had not known who to tell. I thanked her quietly. Yates had a pattern. This was how she operated. She used the rules like a stick and swung it at people too sick to swing back. I had no proof of that yet. Just one whisper from a woman who had been holding it too long to keep holding alone. But the moment she said it, I understood that whatever was happening to my father was not the first time it had happened on this floor, and it would not be the last unless somebody made it the last. When the pump beeped its final beep, a different nurse, one of the regulars, came and unhooked him quick and gentle. I helped Walt into his jacket and told him I needed to do something at the desk before we left. He did not ask what, he just wanted to leave. I walked to the nurse's station and asked for whoever was in charge of the floor. The charge nurse listened while I laid it out. She wrote on a notepad. Then she said, "I'll pass this along, but Yates did follow the concealment protocol. She technically had the right to ask." I told her my father was a known patient, and his colostomy bag was a documented medical device in his chart. She looked at me with the kind of face you make when you agree with someone but cannot say so. "I understand. I'll pass it along." It was a wall dressed up as a door. I was about to turn around when I noticed Yates at a computer terminal 10 feet from the station, typing fast, her face set in that same flat expression. I asked the charge nurse what Yates was doing. She hesitated, then said quietly, "She's filing a behavioral incident report on your father for non-compliance." My father, a 70-year-old man with cancer, who had done nothing except try to keep a medical bag private, was about to have a disciplinary flag put on his permanent patient record at the hospital where he gets his chemotherapy, because he did not lift his shirt fast enough. I walked straight to the terminal and stood beside her. I kept my voice level. I told her that filing a behavioral incident report on a cancer patient for not wanting to show his colostomy bag to a room full of strangers was cruel. I used that word on purpose. Yates did not look up. Her fingers kept moving. "Your father refused a direct safety instruction. That gets documented. If you have a problem with policy, there is a patient advocate office on the 2nd floor." Then she added, still typing, "And if you continue to interfere with floor operations, I will document that too." She said it the way someone reads a parking sign. She was not afraid she had made a mistake. She was making sure the mistake looked like it belonged to someone else. I watched her cursor blink in a field labeled patient behavior, and I watched her fingers type words I could not quite read from where I stood, and I understood that she was not writing what had happened. She was writing what she needed to have happened in order for the call to security to look reasonable. I went back to Walt. His drip was done and he was sitting in the chair with his jacket zipped to his chin, ready to go, looking at nothing. I told him we could leave whenever he was ready. He did not stand right away. Then, in a voice so low I had to lean to his good ear, he said, "Just get me out of here." 4 words. He was not just embarrassed. He was thinking about not coming back. My father needed this treatment. Without it, the cancer comes back, and this time there is no no surgery, and no second chance. We were in the hallway waiting for the elevator when Cooper came up behind us, walking fast but not running. He pulled me a couple steps from Walt's wheelchair and kept his voice low. I want you to know I'm writing my own report. What she called in was not a security threat. I've walked your dad out of here a dozen times. I started to thank him, but he was not done. She called my supervisor and said I failed to act on a credible threat. My supervisor asked her what the threat was. She said a colostomy bag. He hung up on her. I just stared at him. He nodded like he could not believe it either. Yates had gone after the one person on that floor who had shown my dad any kindness. Cooper looked at Walt in the wheelchair with his eyes closed, then back at me. I can't tell you what to do, but if you go to patient relations and use my name, I will back every word. Then he walked back to his post. I got Walt to the car. We pulled out of the parking garage into the late afternoon sun, and for a long time neither of us said anything. About 15 minutes from his house he finally spoke. He looked straight ahead through the windshield and started talking about his brothers, Solomon and Sergio. He almost never brings them up. He said Solomon died in a hospital bed where nobody checked on him for 6 hours, hooked to monitors with a call button, and none of it mattered because the floor was short-staffed. He said then there was Sergio. Sergio had been going to his oncologist for scans, and during one of them a tech said something to him, something small and mean, and Sergio walked out of that office and never went back. By the time the family got him into a different doctor, the cancer had moved into his bones. He died on a Sunday morning in a hospice bed, and the only thing he ever said about the tech was that the tech had been right. Walt gripped the edge of the seat. I watched two brothers give up because someone in a hospital made them feel like they were not worth the trouble. I am not going to be the third. But the little shake at the end told me he was not making me a promise. He was trying to make himself one. I kept my hands at 10 and 2 and my eyes on the road because if I looked over at him I was going to lose it, and he did not need that from me right now. I got him home, got him inside, made sure his meds were lined up. Then I drove back to my place and did not sleep. The next morning I called patient relations and used Cooper's name. I laid out every single thing, from Yates pointing at my father's stomach to the behavioral incident report she filed while he was still in his chair. The woman on the phone took notes and read them back to me. Then she said an investigation would be opened and I should expect a response within 10 business days. I told her my father's next chemo was in 19 days. She said she understood. I asked what happens if Yates is on the floor when he comes back. There was a pause. We cannot guarantee specific staff assignments, but your concern is noted. Noted. Every person I talked to had a different way of saying the same thing. I called the hospital's main line and asked for the nursing supervisor for oncology. Got transferred to voicemail. Called back. Got transferred to a department that had nothing to do with nursing. Called a third time and told the person I was not hanging up until someone in charge was on the line. 7 minutes on hold. Then a man's voice, calm, careful, the kind of voice that tells you this person has had calls like this before. I told him what happened. He said, I'm aware a report was filed. I'm also aware that security did not corroborate her account. We take this seriously. I asked, point blank, if she would be on the floor when my father came back. He paused. I cannot make that commitment right now. Another door that looked open until you walked into it. That evening my phone rang. A hospital number. I picked up thinking it was patient relations. It was Yates. She said she was calling as a courtesy to let me know that due to the behavioral incident on file, my father would need to check in with security upon arrival for his next chemo session. A standard precaution. Same flat tone she had used in the chair. I asked who authorized that. It is automatic when a behavioral flag is on a patient chart. I did not make the policy. I just follow it. She had taken the report she filed, the one Cooper's account said was garbage, and turned it into a system. Now my 70-year-old father was going to have to walk past a security desk and check in like he was on a watch list before he could sit down and try to stay alive. She had built a trap out of paperwork. Every piece looked clean on its own. All of it together was designed to make Walt feel so small and so watched he would rather die at home than walk through those doors again. She knew it. I could hear it in her voice, that quiet satisfaction hiding behind procedure. I went to Walt's house the next morning. He was at the kitchen table with coffee and a folded newspaper he was not reading. I told him about the call, the security check-in, the standard precaution. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he set the coffee cup down and stared at the table. I am not walking past a guard with my hands out so some woman can feel like she won. Quiet. Like someone who had finished being angry and landed somewhere worse. I told him I was handling it. I told him about Cooper's report. He shook his head. Slow. You are not hearing me. I am done going there. He said it like a fact. For the first time in this whole fight, I was scared. My father was choosing his pride over his life, and I could not even open my mouth to argue, because I had been in that room. I had watched what Yates took from him. Asking him to walk back in and check in with security like a criminal was asking him to hand over the last piece of himself that still felt like him. If he stopped going, the cancer would kill him. I drove home that afternoon and sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes without going inside, because I did not know what to do with what I had just heard. I had spent every minute since the chair scene planning my next call, my next letter, my next move, and now the man I was making all those moves for was telling me he was done. I spent the next 2 days at my kitchen table with my laptop and my notebook. I wrote a letter to the hospital's chief nursing officer. Not an email. Typed, printed, signed, sent by certified mail. I included everything. A timeline of every interaction with Yates. The exact words she used. The fact that Cooper had filed a report stating the call was not a legitimate security threat. The fact that Yates had tried to get him written up for it, and that his supervisor had dismissed her. I included the retaliatory phone call about the security check-in. And I included the part I knew would matter most. That my father was now refusing to return for chemotherapy. That a 70-year-old man who had never missed a session was now willing to let the cancer take him, rather than walk past a security desk that existed because one nurse decided he was a problem. I did not threaten to sue. I did not exaggerate a single detail. I did not use words like unacceptable or outrageous. I wrote it like someone building a record for whatever came next, because by then I had learned the hospital ran on paper, and paper was the weapon I was going to use back. I numbered every paragraph so a response could not slide past any of it. I attached a copy of the discharge summary from his colon surgery that documented the colostomy bag as a permanent medical device. I attached a printout from the hospital's own patient portal showing the bag listed under active devices on his chart for 9 months. I made it impossible for anyone reading the letter to pretend Yates could not have known what was under his shirt if she had spent 30 seconds looking. The letter went out on a Tuesday. That same afternoon, my phone rang. It was someone from the chief nursing officer's office. They had received my letter. The chief nursing officer had reviewed it along with the existing reports on file. They wanted to meet with me, in person, tomorrow. I asked if I could bring my father. She said it would be helpful. I drove to Walt's house. He was on the front porch in the old wooden chair, hands on his knees, looking out at the yard. I told him the hospital wanted to meet with us tomorrow. He looked at me, then back at the yard. They want to meet so they can tell us they are sorry, and then do nothing. I sat down in the chair next to him. I let the quiet sit because he had earned the right to be tired of promises. Then I said, maybe, but if you do not walk in there, Yates wins. And Solomon and Sergio did not lose because the hospital was too strong. They lost because nobody showed up and made noise. I had never said their names to him like that before. Walt did not answer right away. He sat looking at the yard. Then, without looking at me, he said, "What time?" I told him. He nodded once and went inside. The next morning, I picked him up at 8. He was standing inside the front door already dressed. Clean button-down shirt, tucked in, jacket over it. He had shaved. His shoes were the good ones, not the slip-ons he wore to chemo. He was walking into that hospital looking like someone who mattered, because the last time he was there, a woman had made him feel like he did not. We passed the security desk near the front entrance. Cooper was there. He saw us coming and stood up. He did not say a word. He gave Walt one single nod, firm and clear. Walt nodded back. Same way. One nod. We rode the elevator to the administrative floor and walked down a carpeted hallway to a meeting room at the end. 3 people sat on one side of a long table. The chief nursing officer, a patient advocate with a folder open in front of her, and a man in a suit from administration. They stood and shook our hands, and there were no smiles, which made me trust them more than if they had been friendly about it. The chief nursing officer spoke first. She said she had reviewed Cooper's security report, the incident report filed by the floor nurse, and my letter. She folded her hands and said, "I want to hear from you both directly." So I told them. I went through every moment in order, the way I had written it in the letter. She listened the whole time without cutting in once. When I finished, she turned to Walt and asked if he wanted to add anything. My dad had not said a word since we walked in, but when she asked him, he leaned forward, and I saw something in his face I had not seen since before any of this started. He looked like himself. "I have been coming here for 9 months," he said. "Your people have put needles in my arms, cut out part of my gut, and hung bags of poison over my head, and I have thanked them every single time because they were keeping me alive. I never once complained. I never once made trouble." And that woman stood in front of a room full of sick people and told them I had a weapon because she did not know what a colostomy bag looks like. He stopped, took a breath. My brothers died in hospitals. One because nobody checked on him. One because he was too ashamed to come back. I almost became the third. My daughter is the only reason I am sitting in this chair. The room went quiet. The patient advocate took her pen off the page and set it down on the folder in front of her. The administrator pulled one of his papers closer to him and read it again. Nobody said anything for what had to be a full 5 seconds. And in a meeting like that, 5 seconds is a long time. The administrator looked down at the papers in front of him, then back up. "The behavioral incident report filed against your father has been reviewed and will be removed from his record today. The security check-in requirement tied to that report is rescinded effective immediately." I waited, because that was cleanup. It was not addressing the person who built it. I asked directly. "And the nurse?" The chief nursing officer answered. "I cannot discuss specific personnel actions with you. What I can tell you is that the nurse in question will not be assigned to the oncology floor during your father's treatment schedule. We are opening a broader review of her conduct based on other complaints brought to our attention after yours." Other complaints. I thought about the woman across the aisle. She had been carrying that story with no one to tell, and when I filed my complaint, the door cracked open enough for others to walk through. The administrator added that Cooper's report had been a key factor in the review. Without it, the investigation would have come down to my word against the nurse's paperwork, and the paperwork would have won. But Cooper had put his name on paper from the inside, and that gave my account the weight it needed. Walt sat quietly through all of it. He did not react when they said the report was being removed. He did not react when they talked about Yates. When the administrator finished, Walt looked up and asked one question. "Can I get my chemo from the same chair by the window? The one with the view of the parking garage?" The chief nursing officer's face almost became a smile. "I will make sure of it personally." 3 weeks later, I took Walt back for his next chemo session. We walked through the main entrance. No security check-in, no flag on his chart. His chair by the window was open. A regular nurse saw him coming and helped him settle in. She tucked the blanket around his legs before he asked, because she knew he got cold during the drip. The drip started. The chair where Yates used to stand was empty. Walt looked out the window at the parking garage and closed his eyes.